Sira stood quietly behind the kitchen wall, her hands trembling as she heard the papers flutter onto the table. "I'm sorry, Zanji," her voice echoed coldly. "You're not the man I married. I can't live like this. Sign them." Zanji didn't speak, not because he agreed, but because her father's letter, the one that held the key to a hidden fortune, still sat unopened in his coat pocket, and it was addressed only to him. Zanji used to be a respected agricultural engineer in the town of Lusela. People admired him for his hard work and honesty. He believed in doing the right thing, even when it was hard. One day, he found out about a big land scam happening at his workplace. Instead of keeping quiet, Zanji reported it to the authorities. It cost him everything. He lost his job. The company turned against him, but he thought at least his wife, Sira, would stand by him. He was wrong. At first, Sira said nothing, but soon, the silence turned into coldness. She stopped speaking kindly to him. She no longer smiled when he came home. The food stopped appearing on the table. When Zanji asked if she was okay, she simply walked away. At night, she turned her back to him, in bed. Her warmth was gone. Each day, Zanji tried to stay hopeful. He looked for jobs. He helped around the house. But Sira didn't care. To her, he was no longer useful, no longer a provider. One day, as he came into the house, he saw papers on the table. His heart sank. Sira didn't even look at him. "I'm sorry, Zanji," she said coldly. "You're not the man I married. I can't live like this. Sign them." She had filed for divorce. Zanji stood there, silent. He wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come. His world had just fallen apart twice, first with his job, and now with the woman he thought would never leave his side. All his sacrifices, all his honesty, all his love, none of it mattered to her anymore. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just looked at her one last time, then walked away. And while Sira believed she was leaving behind a man with nothing, she didn't know what was waiting for him, hidden in an envelope he hadn't opened yet. After the divorce, Zanji packed his few things and left Sira's house quietly. He had no idea where to go or what to do next. His heart was heavy. Everything he had worked for, everything he believed in, was gone. Days passed slowly. Then one morning, he got a call from a lawyer. The man said he was calling on behalf of Baba Amoke, Sira's father, who had passed away not long ago. Zanji was confused. Why would Baba Amoke's lawyer want to meet with him? He went to the office. The lawyer, an elderly man with kind eyes, handed Zanji a sealed envelope. "This," he said, "was left for you, only for you." Zanji took the envelope with both hands. It had his name written in Baba Amoke's handwriting. For a moment, he just stared at it. He remembered how much he respected the old man. Baba Amoke was always quiet, but wise. He didn't talk much, but when he did, his words carried weight. He had once told Zanji, "A man's true value shows when he has nothing left." Zanji never forgot that. Now holding the envelope, Zanji slowly opened it. Inside was a short note. Baba Amoke had written it himself. The words were simple, but they struck deep. "Only a man stripped of everything can wear the robe of responsibility. Go to Nduku Island." Zanji stared at the line again and again. What did it mean? Why Nduku Island? Along with the note was a small old key and a folded paper with a bank account number written on it. Zanji felt his hands tremble. Baba Amoke had left something for him. Not for Sira, not for his own daughter, but for him. A man with no job. A man whose wife had just left him. Why? He had no answers. But in that moment, something inside him shifted. For the first time in weeks, he felt a spark of hope. He didn't know what was waiting for him on Nduku Island, but he trusted Baba Amoke. The man never did anything without reason, and if this letter came after his death, it meant he had planned it carefully. Zanji folded the note, placed the key safely in his pocket, and held the bank slip in his hand. He took a deep breath. Maybe everything wasn't lost after all. Maybe this was the beginning of something he couldn't yet see. He decided to go. Zanji sat alone at the edge of the wooden table, looking at the divorce papers in front of him. His name was written clearly, waiting for a signature. He picked up the pen slowly. There were no words from Sira, no tears, no goodbye. She stood nearby, arms crossed, her face calm and cold. To her, it was just another day, just another decision. Zanji signed the papers quietly. No fight, no questions, just silence. He didn't ask her why. He already knew the answer. She'd made up her mind. To her, he was no longer useful, no longer a husband, just a broken man without a job. He packed his small bag with a few clothes. There was no hug, no moment of pause. Sira turned and walked into the bedroom as if he was already gone. He opened the door and stepped out. The house he once filled with laughter, dreams, and hope no longer felt like home. Outside, the streets were quiet. The neighbors who used to greet him looked away. No one asked where he was going. No one stopped him. It was as if he had already disappeared from their lives. Zanji walked slowly to the bus station and caught a ride to the coast. From there, he found a small boat going to Nduku Island, the same island mentioned in Baba Amoki's letter. His heart was heavy, filled with sadness, confusion, and pain. He stared at the waves as the boat rocked gently. Everything felt distant, his past, his home, even his name. The sun was setting as the island came into view. He clutched the envelope from Baba Amoke tightly in his pocket, the key and the note safe inside. He didn't know what waited for him there. He didn't have any big dreams anymore. He just followed the only path left to him. As the boat reached the shore, Zanji stepped onto the sand. The air smelled different, fresh, earthy, full of something unknown. He looked around. It was peaceful, quiet. The pain in his heart still burned, but he kept walking, step by step. No one knew his name here. No one expected anything, and that, somehow, made it easier to breathe. What Zanji didn't know was that this quiet island, this simple place far from everything he had lost, held a secret, a gift, a turning point. His pain had brought him here, but soon it would lead him to power he never imagined. Zanji walked slowly through the small village on Nduku Island. The sun was warm, and the trees stood tall, whispering secrets of the past. He didn't know where to begin, but he remembered Baba Amoki's note. So he asked a few people if they knew someone named Noro. An old man pointed him toward a quiet house near the edge of the forest. There, sitting on a wooden chair, was Noro, grey hair, strong eyes, and a calm smile. He looked at Zanji for a long moment, then nodded, like he had been waiting. "You must be Zanji," he said softly. Zanji nodded. "Baba Amoki sent me." Before he passed, Noro stood up slowly and opened the door to his house. Inside, the walls were lined with old photos, books, and wooden carvings. He offered Zanji a seat, then pulled out a wooden box from a shelf. From it, he took out an old map, a few letters, and a photo of Baba Amoke standing in front of a cocoa farm. "You don't know who he truly was," Noro began. "Baba Amoke was not just your father-in-law. He was the last son of the Nduku royal line. He walked away from the throne to live a simple life, but he never stopped building in silence." Zanji stared at him in shock. "Royal line, cocoa farm." Noro continued. "He bought land here on the island, built a cocoa empire from nothing, and created a legacy, but he didn't want to pass it to someone who valued only money or status. He waited for the right heart, and he chose you." Zanji couldn't speak. His chest felt tight. "He saw how you stood for truth, how you lost your job to protect others, how you didn't fight back when you were hurt. He told me, only a man who knows pain can carry power with kindness. That's why he left it all to you." Noro handed Zanji the documents, ownership papers, bank records, land title. The value was beyond imagination. Over $350 million. Zanji's hands shook, not because of the money, but because of the trust. "He trusted me," Zanji whispered, "more than his own daughter did." Tears filled his eyes, but he didn't cry for wealth. He cried for the man who saw his worth when no one else did. He cried because someone had believed in his heart, even when the world had turned away. In that moment, Zanji knew his life had changed forever, but not for pride, for purpose. Zanji didn't tell anyone what he had inherited. He didn't post pictures. He didn't buy shiny cars or show off his new life. Instead, he stayed quiet and began to rebuild, slowly, patiently, with purpose. On Nduku Island, he started with the land. He visited every corner of the cocoa farms Baba Amoki had left behind. He listened to the workers, respected their knowledge, and paid them better than they had ever been paid. Many young men in the village who had no jobs or hope were invited to work. Zanji trained them. He gave them purpose. They called him Ogre with respect, but he always told them, "I'm just like you." Soon, he built a small school near the edge of the village. It wasn't fancy, but it had books, teachers, and desks for children who had never seen a classroom before. He made sure every child had lunch to eat. He even started a small clinic with free medicine and care. No cameras, no speeches, just actions. At night, he sat alone on the porch of his quiet home, writing in his journal. He didn't think about revenge. He didn't feel anger. The pain was still there, but he didn't let it guide him. He remembered the moment Sira had handed him the divorce paper. It no longer hurt the way it once did. He heard from others that Sira's mother had fallen sick. She was in and out of the hospital, struggling with medicine bills. Without saying anything, Zanji sent money. Not once, but many times. Sometimes through the hospital, sometimes through an anonymous gift left at their door. He never added his name. He never asked for thanks. He didn't want Sira to know. He just didn't want her mother to suffer. People in the village noticed how kind and humble he was. Some whispered about the quiet man who helped everyone but never talked about himself. Children ran to greet him. Old women prayed for him. And yet, he remained silent about his past. He never contacted Sira, not because he hated her, but because he had already let her go. She had made her choice, and he had chosen peace. His silence spoke louder than any words could. It wasn't cold, it was calm. A deep kind of strength that didn't need attention. Zanji had been broken once, but instead of seeking revenge, he chose to build something better, with his hands, with his heart, and with his silence. After Zanji left, Sira didn't waste time feeling sad. She believed she had made the right choice. In just a few months, she met a new man named Obafemi. He was tall, handsome, and full of charm. He wore expensive clothes, drove a shiny car, and always spoke with confidence. Sira felt proud walking beside him. She thought she had upgraded her life. They got married quickly. She posted pictures, wore fancy dresses, and showed off her new lifestyle. People praised her online, calling her lucky. But behind the smiles, Obafemi was not the man she thought he was. He didn't care about love. He cared about looks, parties, and money. At first, he acted sweet, but soon he started asking for money, little by little. Sira gave him everything. Her savings, her jewelry, even her late father's land. He told her it was for business. She believed him. Then one day, Obafemi didn't come home. Days turned into weeks. His phone was off. His things were gone. So was the money. Sira was alone. She tried to hide it, but things got worse fast. She couldn't pay rent. Her bills piled up. No one offered help. The people who once praised her stopped answering her calls. And then her mother got seriously sick. They rushed her to the hospital, but when the doctor saw the bill, he shook his head. "You need to pay before we can start treatment," he said. Sira begged. She cried. She promised to pay later, but the hospital refused. Sitting outside on the cold bench, Sira covered her face with her hands and sobbed. Her mother was inside, suffering, and she couldn't do anything. In that moment, she whispered, "Even Zanji would have helped me." Her voice cracked with regret. She remembered the man who once stood beside her. The man she had left without mercy, the man who never raised his voice, never gave up, the one she had called weak. And yet, now, in her deepest pain, his name was the only one her heart remembered. What she didn't know was that help had already come. The hospital got a silent payment, just enough to cover the bills. No one knew who sent it, but the nurse whispered to the doctor, "Same account as last time, the one who never gives a name." Sira sat there, thinking she had no one, but far away, on another island, the man she left had already answered her cry, and he did it, without needing to be seen. Sira walked through the busy market with tired steps. Her clothes were plain now, and her eyes looked hollow from all she had been through. Life had changed so much. The woman who once wore gold now counted every coin in her purse. She wanted to buy just a few plantains for her sick mother. That was all she could afford. She stopped at a small wooden stall where a young boy was arranging fruits. She picked some ripe plantains and handed him a few wrinkled notes. But when he counted the money, he looked up and shook his head gently. "You're short," he said politely. Sira quickly reached into her bag, searching for more coins, but there was nothing left. Her face fell. "I'm sorry," she whispered, embarrassed. "Maybe I'll just take fewer." But the boy smiled. "No need," he said cheerfully. "You don't have to pay." Sira looked up in surprise. "Why?" The boy pointed to the back of the stall. "My boss said if ever Sira comes here, she eats free." Sira froze. "What did you say?" she asked quietly. The boy repeated with a bigger smile. "My boss is Zanji. He owns this stall. Actually, he owns everything here. The market, the land, even the warehouse by the port." Her mouth went dry. She held the plantains tightly in her hands, her heart pounding. Zanji? The name hit her like thunder. She hadn't heard it spoken in a long time, not since the day he signed the divorce papers and walked away. Zanji owns this place, she asked again, needing to be sure. The boy nodded. Yes, he helps a lot of people, gives free food sometimes, fixes broken stalls. Everyone loves him here. Sierra stood there, not knowing what to say. The world around her seemed to spin. She had thought Zanji had disappeared, that he had left with nothing, that she had moved on while he stayed behind. But now she saw the truth. He hadn't disappeared. He had risen, quietly, kindly, powerfully. And all this time, while she struggled, the man she had left behind was helping others, including her. She looked at the plantains in her hands, then at the boy. She wanted to speak, but her voice didn't come. She simply nodded and walked away slowly, each step heavier than the last. The past was no longer just a memory. It was standing all around her, alive, humbling, and impossible to ignore. Sierra couldn't sleep anymore. After what she had seen at the market, after hearing the boy speak Zanji's name with respect, her heart felt heavy with regret. She began asking questions quietly, trying to find out where Zanji had gone. Every road led to one name, Nduku Island, the island she had never cared to know about when they were married, the place mentioned in her father's old stories, and the same place Zanji had disappeared to. She didn't have much. Her clothes were worn, her sandals broken. In the end, she walked barefoot. The boat ride was long and quiet. No one recognized her, and she didn't want them to. She sat in a corner, looking out at the sea, holding back tears. This journey wasn't for pride, it was for truth. When she reached the island, she asked for him. People smiled kindly. Zanji? They said. He's at the school. No one asked who she was. No one judged her. She followed the path to the school, passing cocoa trees, clean roads, and happy children running freely. Then, she saw him. Zanji was standing outside the school building, surrounded by little ones. He was helping a boy fix a button on his shirt. He laughed gently, his face calm. He looked nothing like the man she had once called weak, yet everything about him was still Zanji. He saw her, but he didn't speak. Sierra's legs felt weak. She stepped forward slowly, then stopped. The weight of her choices, the pain of her own mistakes, crushed her heart. Without thinking, she dropped to her knees on the grass. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She looked up at him, her voice shaking. You were always rich, she said. Not in money, but in heart. I was too blind to see it. Zanji looked at her for a moment. His eyes didn't show anger, just silence, deep, understanding silence. Then gently, he walked toward her and held out his hand. He helped her stand, slowly, kindly. But he didn't say a word, and without looking back, he turned and walked away, back toward the children. Sierra stood there, the wind brushing her face. She didn't deserve his kindness, yet he gave it anyway. She had come looking for answers, but what she found was something deeper, not forgiveness, not love, but grace. And that kind of grace burned more than any punishment ever could. Zanji never married anyone else after Sierra left. Even though he became very rich, he stayed simple. In his big mansion, he still slept on the same old mattress he brought from his small village, Lucella. People were surprised. There were no shiny decorations, no fancy chairs or golden walls, just quiet, empty rooms, and one special thing hanging on the wall, a portrait of Baba Amoke, the wise old man who once gave him advice when he had nothing. Beneath the portrait, there was a quote that read, "Greatness lies not in wealth, but in how you carry pain." Visitors came and left, always wondering why such a rich man lived like he didn't care about luxury. They didn't understand that Zanji had carried pain deeper than money could ever fix. He had loved Sierra with his whole heart, even when he had nothing to offer her except dreams and honesty. And when she left him for someone richer, it broke something inside him. Not anger, not hate, just quiet sadness that never healed. Every night, Zanji sat by the window with a small journal in his hands. It was old, with soft, worn pages. He still wrote in it, as he did when he was a poor man. Sometimes the words were just short thoughts. Sometimes they were letters he never sent. But always, they were filled with pieces of his heart. One night, he wrote one final line before closing the journal and placing it gently beside his bed. I would have given her everything, but she left when I had nothing. Years later, in the warm shade of a giant baobab tree, children gather with wide eyes and curious hearts. They sit on the ground, waiting for Noro, the village storyteller, to speak. He doesn't bring gold coins or stories about mansions and cars. He brings the story of Zanji, The man who lost everything, then gained the world, yet still chose silence over revenge. The children don't ask, how rich was he? They ask, did he ever cry? Did he ever stop loving her? Why didn't he shout or punish anyone when he became powerful? And Nora looks at them with a soft smile and says, your heart will break one. Just don't let it turn you cruel. The children go quiet. Even the wind seems to pause, because that's the part they remember. Not the money, not the mansion, not even the betrayal, but the strength it takes to carry pain without spreading it. And not far away, just beyond the fields, Zanji bends quietly in his garden. His hands are in the soil, watering the same plants he's cared for all these years. He doesn't know the children are listening to his story, or maybe he does, but as he wipes sweat from his brow, he smiles, not because he won, not because he became rich, but because even in silence, his story lives on. If this story touched you, remember, some people love you for what you give, not who you are. Let them leave. And if you've ever felt abandoned in your lowest season, Zanji's story is proof. Your next chapter can still be the most powerful one.